Hello, this is Roger Weston. Bringing another book call on Thursday of some absolutely amazing books I've picked up in used bookstores. First one is this book here. Seashells. And it's of course exactly what it looks like. It's a book of seashells. This book has I feel kind of sentimental about this book. I used to live in the big island of Hawaii, and I was selling a lot to a lady who owned the property right next door. And I was over at her ranch, her property, little small ranch she owned, and doing paperwork. And I was talking to her, and this is the big island of Hawaii, right? So she's lived here she owned an antique store in Hilo, and so she had lived there for decades, and so she had a collection of seashells, and she showed me this collection of seashells, and it was absolutely amazing. And so, I've had that in my imagination ever since. So this book kind of takes me back. It takes me back there. Seashells are so amazing. Another book I picked up is Montag essays. Now you might wonder, well, why would anybody buy a book of essays? Of course, I'm a writing instructor, and so essays aren't quite entirely irrelevant. But Montag is he's a famous, highly influential. He was a 16th century essayist who was a humble man. He wrote from a humble perspective. He was he wasn't like royalty or anything like that. So people like him in that time generally didn't have a voice, but he did, and he just wrote as a humble person. And so, but he was a very effective thinker, and he wrote on a wide variety of subjects. And I enjoy them. Henry Kissinger, Diplomacy, is another book I picked up. Quite the opposite of the humble Montag. We've got Henry Kissinger, who, as you may know, was a diplomat for the United States. Listen to this. It says, Dr. Kissinger was born in Germany, came to the United States in 1938. Was naturalized U.S. citizen, served in the Army from 1943 to 46. He graduated summa cum laude from Harvard from 1954 to 1969, was a member of the faculty of Harvard University. He was director of Harvard International Seminary from 1952 to 1969. Dr. Kissinger was married to former Nancy Magines and the father of 2 children by a previous marriage. So, anyway, whether you could learn anything productive about diplomacy is perhaps debatable, but fascinating stories about people that he's come across and through his career. Tortured for Christ by Richard Wurmbrand, absolutely a precious book. This book, Richard Wurmbrand, if you don't know, was in prison 14 years in Romanian communist prisons, where he was tortured for 14 years. How would you like to be tortured for 14 years? Do you think you would crack? Well, Richard Wurmbrand did not crack in 14 years because he was entirely maybe if you're curious about how he got through it, you read it yourself. But Torture for Christ, it's a thin little book, and I've read this. I've read another book by him also, which is, I can't recall the name of it. It's a thicker book which goes into more stories, but they're both excellent books. Richard Wurmbrand, and how he survived 14 years in the death camps of Romania under communist torture for 14 years, how he got out of there, and the people that he saw live and die in that hellhole that he was imprisoned. Tenured Radicals is a book I picked up. Now you might wonder, why would I buy a book like that? It's how politics has corrupted higher education. And why would I buy a book like that? Well, I work in higher education. I'm a writing instructor. And so, honestly, though, I think I bought this more for, just as for character ideas, for stories. I've never used it, though. I've had it for years, actually. I've never used this for its intended, what I may use it. It's just it's a reference book for me on the book. I've got hundreds of books stacked up waiting. They're on my reading list, and so this is one of them, which is not a priority for me. It's probably one I doubt if I'll ever read it. It's more like something I would maybe use as a reference book at any given time. I've almost used it a few times, but decided not to. Inside Passage. This is a book I picked up at the local library years ago. Not this copy. This is not a library copy. I picked up the library's copy years ago and read it. It's absolutely a winner. This book, Inside Passage, by Michael Modzelewski. Anyway, I like the book a lot. It's about his experience living in the Inside Passage for a year or something like that, living with killer whales, bald eagles, and the Quaticool Indians. Anyway, I really enjoyed the book. And then last is Ernest Shackleton, which perhaps you're familiar with the story, The Heart of the Antarctic, and his being the story of the British Antarctic expedition. So Ernest Shackleton, if you don't know, was probably one of the most epic survival stories ever told. So there's not much more you can say other than this one is a home run. Ernest Shackleton. So there you go. There's the latest book haul of some books from obscure used bookstores. That's it. Have a great day. Fight on and read on. How's that? Read on.